Good afternoon. This is an appended session to the CREST conference of 2018, and this session is entitled the 2018 Robert L. Linn Memorial Lecture, and I have the honor of introducing our speaker. And before that, I would like to say some words about Robert Linn, Bob Linn. Some of you know him. Some of you didn't have the pleasure. Bob Linn was a UCLA undergraduate, University of Illinois graduate student with a career that included distinguished activity at the Educational Testing Service, then rejoined the University of Illinois as a faculty member, and then ultimately, some years later, moved to the University of Colorado, Boulder. In both places, he won distinguished teaching awards. He had an extraordinary career. He was president of the American Educational Research Association, chair of the Board on Testing and Assessment of the National Academy of Science, member of the National Academy of Education, conducted major studies of our own national assessment, validity, standard setting, worked on technical advisory committees for virtually every state in the U.S., and began work with us in the 1970s. He acceded to my begging in 1984 that he become co-director of CREST in a competition. That wasn't entirely casual on my part, because I understood the head of the evaluation committee was going to be Lee Cronbach, and I decided I wouldn't have any credibility at all. So Bob agreed and served in that role until his death. He moved off of his first central efforts in measurement and research on measurement, and began to exert more and more influence on policy and practice as part of his job at CREST. What was phenomenal about him was that his word could be trusted, and people in policy, regardless of their political affiliation, understood that. His kindness to CREST colleagues, including me, and to students is legendary. He occupied a towering place, I would say, in U.S. research, both for his methodological expertise and then ultimately for the wisdom of his substantive contributions. As his health waned a couple of years ago, he and his wife Joyce talked to me and decided that they would like to memorialize his interest in CREST with an award that would in the future support travel and lecture activities. He wanted to focus on mid-career scholars who had both methodological and a substantive focus. They were torn between giving the money to UCLA or to the University of Colorado, and I suggested Colorado since that was his last academic appointment. But they decided or requested that we have alternating places for giving the lecture. So last year was given at Boulder, this year in Los Angeles. This year, the nominees were from top universities in the States, as well as major testing companies. All of the nominees were extraordinarily deserving. The selection committee included from Colorado, Derek Briggs and Lori Shepard, and from UCLA, Tai Li and me. So today we are going to honor Xin Tao from Beijing Normal University for his accumulated expertise and productivity that has both quality and depth. He has an extraordinary number of publications in English as well as in Chinese on methodology, affective learning, cognitive approaches to learning and teaching, texts for use in higher education. He has done surveys of the status of various aspects of education in China. And of interest personally to me is that he has included design as well as analysis in his work. His extraordinary leadership of connected to the National Assessment of Educational Quality in China, which you heard about today, has resulted in extraordinary innovation and is, for us, object of great envy. To me, he represents the best of our field and is an example of creativity, productivity, precision, and kindness that honors Bob Linn's memory. So it is my honor to invite Xin Tao to come to the stage to give his presentation called Setting Toward Quality of Chinese Compulsory Education. Please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, please allow me to express my deep appreciation to UCLA, to UCLA CREST Center, to Professor Eva Baker, Professor Li Cai, and selection committee. And I would also like to express my respects to Professor Bob Linn. Although I don't have opportunity to meet with him in past, but his distinguished research and policy work, his great personality, and his extraordinary wisdom already be well known in education and the psychological field. After I got my second PhD degree from Teachers College in 2004, I went back and do my work. So far, it's about 50 years. And through this period, my work can separate into two parts. One part is academic work. I'm working with my master and doctor level students and my colleagues. My research area mainly focuses on cognitive diagnostic theory. We actually do some work related to extend the diagnostic model and to trying to develop some kind of equating approach under the cognitive diagnostic model. And we also trying to do some research actually to extend the model fit approach and statistics. Another hand of my work actually related to policy work. After I went back to China, I met a good opportunity or period, because that time our K-12, our education, Ministry of Education, think educational measurement become very important. So I involved a series of policy research, such as Chinese students' key competence framework, and also I involved some kind of national expert committee trying to give some advisement on our reform on testing and high school entry process. Among all this kind of the academic work and the policy work, so national assessment of educational quality is a program that I spend the biggest of my time and my effort. I actually involved at the beginning of this program, a piloting period and the official operational period. So this afternoon, I want to use this title trying to introduce our work. We call that setting standards toward the quality of Chinese compulsory education. I would introduce a little bit about the background, why we have this kind of the assessment program, and what's the concept framework, some progress, and some key methodology issue. I also want to show some very simple example to show that. So, as you may know that China have largest K-12 educational system in the world. So we have 162 million students in K-12 period. We have 11.6 million teachers, and we have 270,000 actual school. So this after 40 years development, China has achieved the goal of 9-year compulsory. So which means that every students in this age period, they will they will go to free. They will access to school free. Now, currently, the quality and the equity issue of K-12 education has become a major concern of our society. And our society and the government expect to our K-12 educational system to have a high-level quality, and hope our students have all-round or holistic development. But how to achieve this kind of a goal? Actually, at the beginning of this century, Chinese government launched a national curriculum reform. Through this reform, they hope to change or reform our educational system, trying to boost our students better engagement in learning, and their learning should be active, not passive. And they hope that our new curriculum should focus on understanding learning experience, should encourage students high-order thinking and inquiry. And they hope to switch teachers' role from traditional instructor to some kind of facilitator and coach. So give students more space to communicate, to cooperate, to inquiry, and to demonstrate what they should be learning. And they also hope that assessment or HESTIC test should be a way for students learning, should diagnose the problem in our educational system, and should improve teachers' teaching. However, although governments make a great effort trying to reform our educational system, there still a big challenge actually exists in our K-12 period. Government help students all-round development, but in real situation, we find that students they overload of learning. They spend a very hard time to do some kind of homework. They don't have time to do physical access. So their physical and the mental health is not that's good as what we expected. And we also find that the social responsibility, students' social responsibility should need to be strengthened, and also the lack of practical ability or skills. How to solve this kind of challenge or problem? There may have some kind of many selections. So one international experience, we can see that among all countries in the world, so most countries select to build up assessment program for their K-12 system. I got a statistic from UNESCO in 2015. It shows that there are about 148 countries or special economic groups. They already carry out the representative national educational quality monitoring program. So, and also currently at the top level of our government, government also think that build up such assessment program is very important. It could be a policy leverage for improve our educational quality and for solve the equity problems. So under this background, actually in 2007, Ministry of Education set up this program we called National Assessment Center of Educational Quality. We call that as a NAEP. You can see that it's similar to American NAEP because we have a similar function actually in this sense. That time, I was part of the governing board for this program. So from that time till now, it's roughly about 30 years. So that's why I hope to spend some time to introduce this program, because I think that from academic perspective, how to use academic research and academic theory to solve the real problem will be some kind of duty for each researchers. So the purpose of NAEQ is trying to diagnostic K-12 education status and to give the advancement and for the educational policy decision-making and the policy modification, and to use for supervise local education administration whether or not they achieve certain goal in our educational system, and also trying to promote our educational quality by use the data result. Another one actually is get public awareness. As you may know that in our society, parents and teachers, they think the most important for students is they get a good test score and go to the good schools or higher level schools and universities. But through this program, we want aware parents and society attention that government expected our students all-round development, not just a good test score. So that's the purpose of this NAEP program. We try to assess educational quality. So eventually, essential questions: what is the quality of education? If we do policy and academic literature review, in last century, it seems that not many people use educational quality. Instead, they use educational outcome, student outcome, central. But in this century, at the beginning of this century, many policy documents internationally, they use educational quality. For our program, when we talk about educational quality, obviously students' outcome will be a center, will be target. But we need to put students' outcome into a systematic system. We need to see how students' outcome looks like this, the whole educational process, and we need gather the different information, different perspective information. And I'll show an integrated model of educational quality. Actually, this model, you can see the different version in international organization. They use the very similar model. This model actually shows that there are many factors that may influence a student's outcome. So we need to gather together all kinds of information together and to give a good or scientific judgment about the whole educational quality systematically. In our NAEP program, we choose grade 4 and grade 8 students as our target population, so similar to American NAEP. So far, we don't go to a senior high school. We just mainly focus on compulsory period of education. But in future, we'll extend to senior high school and to go below kindergarten period. But in this time, we just mainly focus on compulsory period. And the content, the assessment domain actually include 6 assessment domains. You can see math, Chinese language, science is typical internationally. A different country, mainly these 3 assessment domain is a major domain. But we also include PE, physical education, arts literacy, and moral attainment. The reason we choose these 3 assessment domains is because our government and society help students all-round development. Currently, in our educational system, these 3 domains actually were ignored by local local educational administration, by school, and by parents. So that's why we hope to put this 3 assessment domain. It's kind of the, I should say, kind of unique. And every year we choose 2 from 6 assessment domain. So which means the 3-year or circle will cover 6 domain. The first year would be math and PE of fitness and health. The second year will be Chinese and art literacy. The third year will be science and moral attainment. We have this kind of the arrangement. It's because we want to show local educational administration and our society, governments truly pay great attention about students' all-round development. We don't want just test students' math, science, and Chinese language. All this kind of the assessment domain, we try to tackle students' knowledge and skills, mastery level. We try to get information about students' high level cognitive ability. We also try to collect information from students, from their teacher, their master teacher. I'm not sure if this exists in American system, so which means the chief teacher for the class. And we also collect information from principal, and we link our information with Chinese educational statistic background information. So assessment tool include paper pen assessment, and also include perform-based assessment. So this is usually every year we will conduct this assessment at end of the May. So which means last Thursday of each month, each May. So we can actually list maybe in 2030. So what the exact day we will conduct this data collection process. So that's a brief conceptual framework. So I want also introduce some kind of the progress. As you might know a little bit this morning, so we already conduct a 30-year data collection process. From 2007 to 2014, actually we call that as a pilot period of assessment. In this 8-year pilot study, eventually we try to verify our assessment standards, which means the content and the performance standards, whether or not it's suitable for our students. We try to verify our assessment tool, whether or not this kind of tool actually is linked to our education curriculum standards and the assessment standards. We also try to explore the procedure, how to conduct this kind of the data collection process, and how to use the data to make policy and the practical impact. Actually, in 2015, Ministry of Education issued a document and claimed that this National Assessment of Educational Quality become a new program or new policy program for all our educational system, K-12 system, which means that every local sampled county or school, they must participate in this program to gather information. So from 2015, actually we do the first round assessment work to last year. And this year, we begin second round of assessment work. So usually, each year, the sample counting, the number of sample counting is about 331. So among the whole 3,000 counties actually in mainland China area. And through all this 30 years experience, actually we developed the assessment standards and instruments. And these assessment standards actually were issued by Ministry of Education. They agree that we use this kind of assessment framework and standards for our assessment work. And we also, besides of the compulsory period of the assessment standards, actually our center also developed a guideline for 3 to 6 year children early learning and development guideline. So we call that guideline, but eventually that's the standards, because we don't want to push young kids' parents so hard. We not use standard instead of guideline. Eventually, it's a standard, actually. And actually, for this kind of assessment instruments, as I mentioned just now, it's not just pen instruments. We include several new techniques actually to our assessment work. We try to tackle students' the key competence of literacy. Or I said we try to tackle students' 21st century skill in the state's background. In China, currently we have a similar framework. We call that key competence framework compared to American 21st century scale. But this framework is more official because were agreed by Ministry of Education. So I want to give a very brief example. So how this kind of instruments can actually assess students' literacy or competence. For example, when we assess students' arts literacy, eventually people will think their students can sing a song or can draw a painting will be their literacy. So we don't want our tests just focus on common knowledge. So what's the author of this painting, something like that. So in our assessment program, actually, we do ask students to sing 2 songs and to draw a painting and to create a melody. But in Chinese situation, it may quite easy to collect this kind of information, but it's hard actually to code these materials. So we invite ICT technology in this stage. For example, actually, when we ask sampled students to sing a song, we use internet and ask students to sing, and we record their voice and directly go back to our server. Besides of that, actually, we use computer automatic scoring technique actually to give students a score. So for this part, actually, we ask experts to code 500 to 1,000 pieces of students' voice, and we let computer to learn their coding characters and learn their coding pattern. And after computer have this kind of the pattern, a computer will do a code process automatically. So that's the part of the instruments. So what I'm trying to show is that the assessment tool is not just a traditional paper, pen, pencil test. We use a new approach, actually trying to tackle their high-level competence or skills. That's actually the requirement from our administration. The administration or the Ministry of Education actually require us every test you should have a positive improvement or positive effect to our K-12 education instruction. So we don't want get some kind of the bad impact in this sense. And the second part, second progress actually, we set up the systematic procedure and the methods for our data collection process. Because actually, as you can see, that every year, roughly we'll collect 200,000 students their test response information. So it's a heavy, it's a massive data set. So how to organize this data set become very important issue. And we also set up a full data collection system for our educational quality. The first one actually is a national, it's a NAEP data collection system. As I mentioned, every May we'll collect data. The second part, actually, we trying to choose some schools among 100 county. We're trying to do longitudinal tracking data, collect the tracking data. And also, our center actually is a PISA China center. It's also a PISA China center. We collect the PISA data based on requirement from PISA secretary. And last one, actually, we're trying to gain the real-time dynamic data. We're trying to, because we're trying to switch our assessment approach actually from traditional one to the one that can meet the ICT technique. So that's the four. Through this four system, we have a routine data collection. We have an international comparable data, because as you may know that as you may know, I'm not sure. In China, it's a long time we don't have educational quality data. In our system, we have official educational statistic data, which means that we have every schools. So how many students in your school, how many teachers in your school, what's the building information, and how your teacher distribute, whether or not they have a bachelor degree or something like that. We we also have the financial data for K-12 period, but we don't have quality data. But because of our work, because this NAEP program, so officially we have a third type of data. It is education, K-12 educational quality data. And we can also link these three data together because we use the students' very uniform student ID. So which means that we can link students' individual performance to their background information and also to our educational system information. So in this sense, so we have a data management platform, as I introduced this morning. And we also actually to release our data report actually in public. So in this July, actually is the first time for China to have a Chinese compulsory education quality report. So in this July, although we already actually run this program about 30 years, but it's the first time actually this year we finally released the results in public. Because actually every year we just go to educational administration and the top level of government and go back to local educational administration as well. But we didn't release this kind of data in public. But this year is actually first year. Government agreed that you can actually release part of results in public. Through this way, you can because we can give some kind of guidance to our society. So what's the real quality status of our K-12 education? And we also make a great effort to explore the possible effective ways of using assessment result. Because as we always said that a large-scale assessment is not a purpose. It's a tool to try to extend your certain idea or your certain expectation. So, but how to use this kind of results? Actually, we do lots of work. For example, we submit the results and findings to Ministry of Education and even to top level of government, and show them what's the current status of K-12, and is there any significant or severe problems or issues government should pay attention. And we also actually provide the report to each provinces. You may know in mainland China there are about 31 provinces. So we feed back to each province when after we analyze the data. We also provide the test assessment report card to sampled county, because right now every year we will have 3,031 sampled county. By the way, besides of 300 sampled county, we will also have roughly about 200 county actually participate in this program, because they say that this program is a national standard or national rulers. So if the participant that this program, they will know their position in this scale. So that's why actually current years, each year we roughly will have 500 counties actually participate in this test, this assessment work. So every year, so one big work actually is after we finish the data analysis process, we'll go back to different provinces or a group of different provinces and feed back to them. So what's the data results? So what kind of question we can get from this data, and what kind of strategy they should take actually in their future. So that's another part. As you know, that Chinese governance system is a centralized governance system. At national level, we have this program. So if typically the provincial level and the local county level, they all have a similar program or similar institute actually take this part of responsibility. So we actually, besides of running national assessment program, we also actually to do the capacity building work. We training professionals from different provinces to help them to actually at least build up such center at provincial level. So that's what we are doing. So far, among 31 provinces, there are 27 provinces actually set up such assessment program or such assessment institute. Because this is an academic actually work, so I should introduce a little bit the detailed technical part or methodology part. So I try to introduce methodology issue. So some key issues related, what's your assessment framework and how you develop your test and your background questionnaire. So what kind of variable you include and what kind of item actually you developed. And what kind of sampling strategy you use and how you make a judgment about student test score, something like that. So for assessment score, here, for example, the math score, we assess students' math performance. So one is their academic performance or academic achievement. We actually separate as a mathematical operation, space, data analysis, reasoning, problem solving, all this kind of the sub-score. This sub-score, you may see, is not kind of beautiful in psychometric way, but actually this is a big concepts we gained from mathematical educational expert panel. They don't think that psychometrics is important. They want to show that in mathematical education, they think students should actually master this kind of we call that key concepts or core concepts. And we also assess students' interest, attitude, and we collect the background information. Actually, for example, obviously their social economic status, how much time they spend in doing different mathematical work, and how teacher instruct or teaching all this kind of information. And this is another PE, or fitness and health framework. Actually, we do a sport test. We do ask students running, jumping, or this kind of the performance-based test. Because we think that it's very important to get evidence or data to show our students their body ability or skills. And of course, we also include the background questionnaire, ask students their exercise habit, how much time they take in typical way, and how many classes they will take in each week, or this kind of information. And this is actually a framework about the arts or arts literacy. You see that although we include some kind of common knowledge about the arts, the knowing and understanding, but mainly we focus on appreciation and evaluation about the arts, about different type of arts. And we also trying to assess students' arts performance, whether or not they can create some art, like they can sing, they can create a melody, all this. This is the first part, actually, framework. I didn't list the science and other moral attainment, but I just want to show that this framework actually is not the framework developed by psychometrics or by technical person. Actually, it's developed by each assessment domain, the experts in that part. Sometimes we have a lot of debate. We said that technically your framework should look like this, but no. So you don't know about our field. So that's why it's kind of the and the test and the questionnaire development for each assessment domain, we use a matrix sampling design to arrange the items. But we use 6 booklets for every assessment domain. So here it's kind of limited. Actually, if you see NAEP or PISA or TIMSS, they have 30 or 50 booklets. But in our educational system, every sampled school, we just have 30 students. And also, develop items is kind of the skill that needs item development, make a developer make a great effort. So far, it's hard actually for them to have more items in this part. And this is a typical distribution of item format for grade 4. So we have a multiple choice item, we have a construct response item, and we have a very broad construct response items. And what kind of item looks like? All kinds of items, because we are assessment trying to tackle students' high-level cognitive skills, their competence or literacy. So each items will put them into a certain condition, context, or certain background. I want to give one example like this. As I mentioned just now, after students learn music, we expected they can perform some kind of music skill creatively. So here is it's items. So we give students the following a piece of melody. We ask them to create at least 2 sections of the melody based on their, and make it complete and fluent. So we don't actually expect they have a same actually answer. As long as we think it is complete, it match with basic rule of music, that's fine. So that obviously it's not. It's kind of, we can have a very broad answers in this part. Of course, for example, this is a simple type of melody. I don't know how to say it because I'm not a musician. It's hard for me to actually to say that. But for example, we use this do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si. If students put the number 8 or 9, obviously that's wrong, right? And I want to show another example. Here it's an example. We give students 2 paintings. One painting is a Chinese traditional painting, a horse painting. Another painting actually is a French painting, a horse painting. So we ask the students to describe the difference between these 2 paintings, but we ask them describe the difference depend their visual arts knowledge, not just a very broad sense. So this is good, that's bad, but their visual arts knowledge. What is the visual knowledge? I don't know, because I'm not the expert in this area. So I just thought that if I take this kind of test, I will get a very bad score. Because in my age, or my schooling age, there is not much classes actually tackle like arts or something like that. So I even don't know how to answer this. But it looks like our students perform pretty well. They can actually get some kind of comparison. So for the background questionnaire, so we have a student's background questionnaire. You can see that obviously there are something related to motivation and attitude and interests, activities and time for study, their social economic status, and their background information, whether or not their parents encourage their learning, and all this kind of information. For teacher background information, of course, the teachers' credential information and teaching effectiveness, efficacy, and the teaching experience, and also some kind of the professional development information. So whether or not they have some kind of professional training, how they feel about their teaching work, or something like that, and whether or not they feel a lot of pressure or burden for their teaching task. We also, for principal questionnaire, include school infrastructure and finance information, and school management. Currently, we use the leadership in many ways in school, like we call typically school leadership. But now we have a curriculum leadership, students management leadership. It's a type of leadership we use. But every year, we don't include all of them. We just choose a piece of them, actually include, and also school climate. and the school information about the problem behaviors. Yeah. Sampling methods or sampling strategy. Our NAEP program, we use a 3-stage proportional probability sampling methods. So at the first stage, we choose more than 100 counties among 3,000 counties. And the second stage, actually within each sampled county, we choose 20 schools, random choose 20 schools. And within each schools, we choose grade 8 or grade 4 students, 30 grade 8 or grade 4 students. The teachers who actually teach sampled students will also include as our data collection subject. So that's so one thing I want to explain that although at the first stage we choose sample county from the 3,000 counties, but we put the provincial difference as our stratified variable. So we ask our sample can actually represent each province pretty well. So we can see that the sample bias at the national level is less than 0.1%. And sample bias at the provincial level is less than 4%, or 4%. So this is a sampling design we used for our assessment program. And another part, how we can get information or get quality information from our student test score. We use angle and bookmark approach actually to set up the cutoff point. So every time we actually include more than 15, because I didn't check that. But every time we roughly will have 13 experts from different area, geographic area, and research, not research, because besides all research, they are teaching, they are master teacher, and they include the principal and the local educational administrators. So I list this part of the variable we can actually consider, but it's hard because you add one variable you want to consider, it would be require the more experts. So we separate students' performance from level 1 to level 4. So 1 is similar to American below basic, yeah. But in Chinese educational situation, we don't use below basic proficiency and advanced, because we don't want our assessment program make more pressure to our educational system. So we just use level 1, level 2, level 3, and 4. And we also said level 2 or up level 2, the percentage of that, like Professor Luo introduced this morning. So it's kind of funny because you can use a simple terminology, but you don't want cause some kind of trouble. So we just use this kind of thing. So that's a brief methodology issue I want to introduce. I want to give show very brief results as an example. Different from what Professor Luo Liang introduced this morning, I actually use a very broad data results from a pilot period because it's just an example. So, for example, people always interested in what's rural-urban difference. You can see that at a rural area, small township, county level, and urban level. So you see that levels, the percentage of level 1 students just decrease very quickly. At rural area, it's about 22% of students actually belongs to this part. But in urban urban area, there are just 5.3% of students belongs to level 1. And we can see other side, you can see that for the top level, level 4, in rural area, there are not many students actually belongs to level 4. But in urban area, it's even up to maybe 40% of students as belongs to level 4. So we can imagine there are big difference among a sampled county. So it's obviously some county students perform very well, but some county students perform very badly. So that's why we just related a piece of data in public. So here is a gender different issue. There is no significant gender difference in math, but for example, the boys perform a little bit better than girls in science. And if we decomposite the achievement variance, we will see that actually students' individual variance is about more than 16% of variance actually belongs to student individual level. School level is kind of quite small, and county level is pretty so which means that among different county, the students' performance, the variation of student performance is quite large. So this figure gives us evidence that we should put our educational policy at county level. We should try to shrink the difference among different counties. So obviously there are some kind of the factors, background factors related to students' performance, because this is just a very example, so I don't want to spend time to explain this part. And here it's an example and shows that whether or not students do some kind of experiments during their science class. So this data actually in 2012 pilot period, we found that in life science, physical science, there are large amount of students, they might don't do experiments actually in class. For example, life science, 16%, more than 60% of students didn't or never do this kind of the experiments in their class. Of course, because physics actually is kind of the discipline that would or test by high school entry examination, you will find that the people didn't or never do these experiments. The percentage of people is quite a little bit lower, but still there are many large amount of students actually didn't do this kind of the experiments. So in China, we have one terminology called this kind of the phenomena. We said that a teacher will help students to do a blackboard experiments. So which means that on the blackboard, the teacher will taught students the first step, you should do this, and the second step, you should do that. And you just memorize that. Memory all this kind of the procedure and what kind of the significant, what kind of the details you should pay attention. They can go to participate in the high school entry examination. So that's part. So government trying to actually to use this kind of data to actually ask local education administration make their own effort. And we also trying to link our NAEP program actually to PISA study, because in China, actually, we just a small number of provinces actually participate in PISA. Most provinces they didn't participate in the PISA test. So we hope to link the PISA test to our NAEP test. So in 2007, there is a PISA China pilot study. So that's the one actually, there are about 10 provinces participant. It's kind of fairly a large number of provinces. So far, when we China participant PISA program officially, 2015 and 2018, there are 4 provinces actually participate. So we actually use equal percentile equating methods. We found the correlation between PISA score and NAEP score. It's the correlation is more than 0.97. Yeah. So this gave us a small piece of evidence about our NAEP program. So that's a very brief introduction about our results. So last part, I just want to remark what we already did. For the successful part, we actually, our efforts already make a significant impact on policy aspects. For example, recent years, when top governments talk about educational issue, they always think that this kind of assessment program should play an important role. So that's, and also NAEP actually in 2015, this program became an official policy program. And the data and the results are used for inspection system in K-12 education. Because in China, we have a national inspection system. This system is actually similar to British and France. They have a similar system. I'm not sure in the States you have a superintendent, but it seems a different purpose, different responsibility. So actually, the data and the results actually used for this inspection purpose. Central government actually use these kind of results and ask a provincial level educational administration So how they can improve their own educational quality and trying to shrink the educational equity problem. So one thing I feel very important to say is that we actually have a significant impact on academic perspective. You may know that China is a big country of testing and assessment, because every assessment program, for example, high school entry examination, college entry examination, there are about 11 million students actually participate in this kind of test. So we are a big country of testing and assessment. But it's not a research power of educational measurement and research. Because we're running this program, so people begin to treat educational testing and assessment as type of professional work. Because traditionally you think that every teacher, they can actually to develop or to write down some items and to ask students to take that kind of test and to give a score and make some kind of judgment. But no government, local government think that this is kind of a very technical work. We need more experts in this area. So master level and doctor level graduates are welcomed by local educational administrations and by schools. So I think that's something I feel proud actually in academic perspective. I think it's this. It's not just I publish some paper, but I think that in our society, many people think this work actually is a professional, technique-oriented work. So last few words. Anytime we're running this kind of large-scale assessment, typically there are lots of debate. So I think the similar situation in the States. So people will argue whether or not accountability policy have some kind of bad or negative impact. In China, we also face a similar debate. So what is the educational quality? And whether or not we should use our national curriculum standards as a guideline for develop this kind of assessment program, or just we like a PISA, we use literacy oriented test. We don't. So all these kind of debates, or you can imagine. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. Thank you again. Thank you for giving us this great honor to talk here. Thank you.
We would welcome, of course, questions from the audience. Marcus?
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. I really enjoyed it. I have a question regarding, like, if you compare your NAEQ to our NAEP, the NAEP, in terms of like resolution, do you go down on county? Or you go down on county level? Do you go down any further, like student level, or so like, for example, if you want to do longitudinal data collection, then you would need like student IDs. How far do you go down?
Actually, I think that compared to American NAEP, so the policy impact of NAEP may be much stronger in Chinese educational system, because you know this is a centralized educational system. As long as the Ministry of Education conduct this kind of program, they try to use the results to make a policy impact. But of course, so far we just stop to county level. We don't go to school and even to students' individual level, because when we running this program, we already claim that this program is not hashtag assessment program, in the sense of that they have not burden or punishment to local schools and students. And we try to actually develop some kind of longitudinal data collection process, but it's just in a very small piece or small number of schools. We don't have a very broad or large sample size for longitudinal work.
Thank you.
An informational question. Are there research reports available in English? And particularly, I noticed that you had a rural-urban difference with respect to differences with respect to a particular result. That strikes me as requiring going below the county level, but not punishing particular schools. Mm-hmm. So I guess there are two questions really. Have you done any of that sort of work? And second, are the reports available in English?
That could be our next work, to translate our report actually in English. So far, we just have a Chinese version, and we also get some kind of requirements from international organization like a World Bank or some institution. But so far, we don't have an English version. And we use the data at the county level, because we go back to each sampled county report card. So we show that your county, how many students participate in this assessment, and what's the student's performance, and is there any significant background or educational variable that's related to student performance. And we're trying to encourage sampled county to do the further work to solve their problem. But we don't have a concrete strategy yet.
Thank you very much. Standards is not an educational term, it's a business term. In the United States, there were many businesses that wanted Common Core standards. There were also top military people who wanted Common Core standards. And the federal government donated hundreds of millions of dollars for testing. In China, was there also backing by business, military, and the federal government?
We don't actually, this program actually, we don't initiate from the industry part, I should say. So it's actually the pure policy program, actually initiated by the Ministry of Education. Because as I introduced at the beginning, so when China reached a 9-year compulsory education, government trying to find a way to know specifically about our educational quality, provincial by provincial, province by province. So government push that. So of course, that military part is another part in our country. So they don't involve this program. It's pure conducted, initiated by Ministry of Education.
Thank you very much. I kind of really learned a lot from your presentation this morning and this talk as well too. Actually, I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to have only 3. The first one is kind of I think that in the stage of assessment of educator quality in any kind of country's system, I think that you should start with the theory of action. After you collect this kind of assessment information, how to improve your educator system and educator quality. So I think that that's kind of a key goal at the first place. So whether or not the Chinese government have that the theory of action of how to use this assessment for whatever policy perspective or things like that. And then the second question is just really amazing because I know you're the professor in the Beijing Normal University, and then this is kind of a national level assessment. And then as a professor, I mean, if in the United States, I mean, even in Korea and any other country, I mean, the one person as a professor, I mean, the China is the largest country, and then do the charge of this, all the effort by one person as a professor. And I'm also wondering how many kind of employee in your center do this kind of work. I mean, we should learn that kind of efficiency of the system. And that's kind of my second question. The third question is,
You just said you have two questions.
okay, I'm going to stop here then. Thank you.
Just a joke. I try to answer the second question first. It's not my individual work. Eventually, actually, it's a work conducted by a group of people. Our center director is the president Dong Qi of Beijing Normal University. So I and Dr. Luo Liang is a deputy director to running daily operational work. So it's a group of people. So far, our center, there are about 230 center staff, full-time staff. So include some part actually have a academic track professors, but most of them are just the center staff to help to running this. When we collect data, it's not ourselves actually to go to school to collect it. We use our educational system. So as I mentioned, in China, we have a national inspection system. So every time we just work together with them. We design the instruments, we do data analysis parts, we observe and monitoring the data collection process and do reporting part. But data collection part actually mainly depend on them. So every time, I'm not sure how many people are involved in the collection because within each school there are about 10 or 15 people actually involved. So, but that's the second question. And the first question, yes, running this kind of the assessment work. It's an assessment program. It's a heavy work. We must use the results to make some kind of impact. So as I mentioned just now, our educational system is a centralized system. So this become kind of easy to make this kind of impact compared to the states or West country. And every time we submit our report to Ministry of Education, the different departments will see, so what's the student's performance, and is there any questions related to their responsibility or their work, and they separate that into. And another part, actually, the reason our center is kind of big is because the center director, President Dong, always encourage us to do further. They said that, and you can easily find that there is some kind of the connection between background variable and the student's performance. But how does that mean? Does that mean some kind of causal relationship or not? So they encourage us actually to organize experts in mainland area, even overseas experts, to do further intervention study, to select some part of the some part of district and to conduct this kind of. So that also gave us our work in this sense. But true, we do want make some kind of policy and a practical impact in this sense.
Well, I'm sure that you all must have a great deal more questions. I have a couple that I've written down on my notebook. The speaker will be here for a little bit more after the award plaque presentation, so feel free to come up. Otherwise, please give Professor Xin Tao another round of applause. Thank you, and Eva and I will present the plaque.
So it's our great honor to present this award to Xin Tao for his contribution so far and his promise in the future.
And that concludes all of the events related to CRESTCON. Thank you very much for staying. Thank you for your attending our conference and the Linn Awards session. See you next time.